going?
You're squatting on somebody's antique store?
Well, 3 times a year, this is my space.
Ah. Now Brimfield just had a show a couple months ago. How far out are they spaced?
It's May, July, and September.
May, July, okay. Every other month in the summer.
In the summer, yep.
How's it going?
Well, today's a setup day, so
okay.
we're just kind of there's always a little activity, but not a lot today.
Today's the day where you wander around everybody else's booth and do your buying?
Actually, there's restrictions on buying in this town.
Oh.
So in fact, what we have is I'm in a unique situation. I'll give you a quick little look. So this is the porch here at Brimfield.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half of this side of the porch, and there's another side over here. And so I'm in the process of setting up. You can see some of the books in the background here.
Mm-hmm.
Those windows will be totally covered by tonight with boxes of books. And I create a 25-foot wall of books right here. And plus, in the front table here, I also will have more boxes stacked up about 6 feet high. So in fact, this is my space in Brimfield 3 times a year.
Excellent. It's good to see you in action.
Well, not only are you going to see me in action, but you're going to see what really this is really a happening place. When Brimfield kicks out tomorrow, we'll be seeing thousands of people going by right here.
Wish I could be there. But speaking of action, it's time to get our show kicked off. It's Action Day, September 11th, a historic day in history. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rare Book Cafe, the book lovers' rendezvous, where the topics are priceless and the conversation is free. Hi, I'm your host, Ed Markowitz of Montgomery Rare Books in Portland, Oregon. The Rare Book Cafe is the only weekly video program on the internet devoted entirely to rare and collectible books and the people who love them, and that's you, YOU. Thanks for joining in. Leave us a comment on the Facebook page or send us an email to rarebookcafe@gmail.com to let us know what segments you are enjoying, guests you'd like to have back on the show, or give us a recommendation or whatever. We love hearing from you. We're here every Saturday at 12:30 Eastern Daylight Time, 5:30 Greenwich Mean Time for all of those of you over there on the other side of the pond. We're also streaming on YouTube and Facebook as a podcast. You can find us as Rare Book Cafe Raw, Rare Book Cafe Raw, wherever you download your favorite podcast. With me, those happy smiling faces you see on the screen right now are Lee Lynn of Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning.
Give us a wave in. The ever fearless road warrior, Richard Morey. Hello, Richard.
Hey, Ed. Hi, Lee.
Good morning, Richard.
Greetings. Hey, before we get started, I just want to let all of our folks know we've got a good show for you today. Obviously, Richard Morey. Lee's going to share with us some memories and material from summer camp. David Hess will be back with Things Found in Old Books, everybody's favorite segment. Mary Kay Watson, our in-house illustrator, is going to talk about some CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps ephemera. We will be back towards the end of the show to talk about her book club report, and we're going to finish up the show today with a little tribute to 9/11. It's hard to forget, isn't it, Lee and Richard, where you were when Kennedy was shot and where you were when you heard about the 9/11 towers.
It is. It's sort of burned into your memory.
I know both those days well.
Yes, we do. It's something that sticks with us. But let's move to a little lighter side. Richard, you're sitting out there on a porch in Brimfield, Massachusetts, getting ready for this week's Brimfield show. What's it all about?
Well, Ed, you're making me sound rather leisurely when I'm actually in the middle of a setup. I started last night unloading my van at 6 o'clock, and this morning I was at it again at 7 o'clock setting up. And I've got a van full of books and a trailer as well. And by tomorrow morning, this will be the largest bookstore in probably Western Massachusetts, and certainly the
You
best
know,
books of all in Brimfield.
I don't think the public realizes how much energy goes into a book fair. Lee and I were talking earlier today about hauling books. I mean, you've got these boxes, a couple of cubic feet of what was it, 1.3 cubic feet of boxes that weighs 45 pounds. You need at least 20 of them for a show. That's 800 pounds up the steps and 800 pounds down the steps.
Well, multiply that a few times, Ed, and you'll get a little bit of a sense of what I'm carrying here.
Oh my goodness.
And,
yeah, I would imagine. I guess 20 boxes is probably on the light side. But what do you have? What can you share with us there today, Richard? I understand you've got some games.
I've been out and about. Ed, and I found some things I want to share with you. Now, I think everyone probably remembers their days of landmark books. I'm hoping that you can see that box here in front of me. I think it's this box here. I'm trying to see with my eyes. Yeah, there you are. The landmark books. Those are in every school library at one time, and they're considered some of the best written history for juveniles, written by famous authors who wrote on the subjects. In fact, one of the books I have here is on West Point. Part of the series, there's another one called the United States Air Force, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what I have is, and I think, let's get this the right side up. Can you see this? This is the landmark game, West Point, produced by Landmark Books, and it's the game. They did it. I had never seen them before. There's also one on the U.S. Air Force. You can see that, I think, here pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just exciting games. You can see a little bit of the inside of the box. I have them wrapped up in saran wrap.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I've got my 45th West Point reunion coming up the third weekend of October. I think I might just pick up that game and bring it to the reunion with me.
Well, Ed, you would be one of the only people at West Point who probably has ever had this
I've never seen it before.
It's one of the rarest of the games in the game world. I've only ever seen these two landmark games. I've never seen another one. I did recently pick up a Big Little Book puzzle on a Tarzan puzzle put out by the Big Little Books. But those are really unusual and rare items. So this is one of the things I'm going to have here at the show. I also have something I picked up yesterday. I'm thinking you can see a good picture of this.
The Magic Doll of Romania.
Yes, written by Maria, 1929, published by Frederick Stokes, and illustrated by Maud and Mishka Petersham. This is just a delightful book. I literally had to take a break from my booth yesterday and go find the bathroom, and on the way there, I stumbled onto this book and bought it. Had I not done that trip, I wouldn't own this book.
Now, that author only has one first name, Marie?
Maria. Well, actually, there is something unusual. She's done other books, and I didn't have time to research that because I literally just bought this yesterday. But in fact, I've had other books written by her. But this is the first time I've ever seen the prefix Queen Maria.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to learn more about that. I've got to find out why Queen Maria. But there's only one copy of this listed online. That's how unusual this book is. So that was yesterday's find. I was really excited about that. And the other thing I actually found yesterday, for those who are like books on books, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, but you may know the right pronunciation. The Max Schwendler. this is a reproduction of his book Restoration. And it turns out this is a very scarce book. I was quite surprised, even in a reprint. It's very uncommon. And it's a wonderful piece on restoration on paper and books. Let's see if I find a nice image here that will pop out. Go
Richard,
ahead.
while you're looking at that, I'm wondering if that's Queen Maria of Romania, who was the Queen of Romania from 1914 to 1927. And I happen to know that because she came out here to Oregon, married a very wealthy man who invented asphalt, believe it or not. And out here actually it's on the Washington side of the river, we've got Maryhill. It's a fabulous museum where Queen Maria brought many of her artifacts from Romania over.
Well, in fact, that probably is because it says the magic doll of Romania.
Yeah, that's probably Queen Maria of Romania, who lived out here in Oregon for a number of years.
Well,
it also says on there it was written for American audiences. Did she write it after she moved?
It's 1929, so I'm assuming that is the case. Yeah. So she must have just moved here. It's the subtitle is A Wonder Story in Which East and West Do Meet, written for American children. It's the subtitle.
Yeah, so, she first came here in 1926, I believe. So after a couple of years of acculturation, she was probably had enough information to write the book.
Yeah.
She was widowed in 1927.
Well, therein lies her need to make money.
All right, I've got most of your research done for you there, Richard. Let's get that online.
I gotta love the age of technology, dude. Gotta love the age. So, in fact, going back to the Book of Restoration, here's an example of one of the pages. It's a really good book. I'm actually going to sit down and thumb through this and read some of it. I hadn't seen it before, so I'm going to probably for a short time add this to my reference library and then sell it. So that was another exciting find. And then, the world of books is often interlaced with other things, and puzzles and maps have an intersect with the world of books. So I've been really fortunate. There's a series of puzzles on states. These were done by... Who's the company? I don't know the company. Oh, Madma Quality Company out of Utica, New York, did this series on puzzles. This happens to be the New York puzzle, and this complete. But I recently discovered, and this one really stunned me, I have the Massachusetts puzzle, and it's still sealed in the original wax paper wrap that's glued onto the never opened, never used.
Wow.
And that is so unusual. I've had these puzzles a few times over the years, but never ever seen them unsealed. So those are some of my little toys and treasures said. And I promise you, I'm here at Brimfield, and there will be lots more surprises.
We wish we could be there.
Well, it's a really, and this is going to be one of the great weeks. The weather is going to hover between 75 and 55 all week long. It's never going to be colder or hotter than those numbers. So, and we're only expecting one possible rain afternoon, some showers. So this should be an incredible week at Brimfield. We've deserved it. We've been 2 years waiting to kind of get things back in the swing of things. The tents are up. People are going to show up, and we're going to have a great time here.
Are there many other book dealers besides yourself, Richard?
There's a few. There used to be quite a few more. Barbara Smith used to do this show from Massachusetts. There's a couple other guys who were what I'd call were out there on their own that didn't have shops that would do this, but it's kind of whittled down. I think there's maybe one other person who's focused on books, but not all books. But I also have a premier location. There's an antique center in the middle of town, and I have the good fortune to be on the porch. of that antique center, and it's a north facing. I never get the sun on the porch. It's just a great, great location, and the kettle corn guy is in front of me.
Perfect.
And you won't get the rain either.
And I don't, unless it comes from the north, which occasionally it does, but otherwise, no, I never get the rain. And this spot is high and dry.
One last question. Anything meaningful about the globe behind you?
Actually, I just bought that. This is one of my other little finds. I buy other unusual things. It does light up, and I haven't plugged it in yet, so I don't know. They said it works. I recently bought one of these globes that light up. That when it acts like a nightlight, and in the dark it shows you the star charts.
Ooh,
So
that's interesting.
it turns into a star chart in the dark. So, and it's lit from behind internally. So I'm waiting to see this lit up tonight when it's dark and I can get the full effect of it. So, but I like globes and I do well with them. I just recently sold a globe that I had in French, which I don't see foreign language globes very often.
What is the box behind you that looks like it has small up on the top shelf?
Yes.
There.
This is a small selection of my Big Little books.
The Big Little books.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was mentioning to you that I recently also found a puzzle put out by the Big Little books. So, and these, generally they're not expensive, although there's a few of them here. This is a Charlie Chan that is near fine condition as you can really ever find these. So this was a little pricier, but a lot of them are, in the $25 to $50 range. But condition, as you know, is everything on a Big Little book.
For sure.
So you got a good eye. And I'll try to send Alan a video of what after the setup is done. So we'll have a little record of that.
Great.
Good. Looking forward to it. Best of luck this week, Richard. Sell out.
Well, thanks, Ed. Take care and then enjoy the fall weather. We are now coming into fall.
We've got a ways to go.
Leaf peeping in New England is on the World Heritage sites of things to do.
And this may be a great year. The weather and the water we've had this year, the rain has been really good for the trees, and I think we may have a spectacular fall foliage.
Excellent. All right, everybody, get in your car and hop on up to Brimfield, Massachusetts. Say hello to Richard Morey when you get there. Always appreciate it, Richard.
Three times a year, May, July, and September. I'm here.
And it's a perfect time of year.
Yep. Take care.
Ciao. He is so exuberant, so energetic, so exciting.
I'm glad that when I go to shows, I don't take quite as much stuff as he does.
Yeah. Well, you saw his van a couple of weeks ago. He's got one of those big long vans. Yeah,
and he said he had a trailer this time too.
Yeah. All right, Lee, we're going to move into your segment. It's the end of the summer and summer camps are over. Oh, those memories of childhood. Our executive producer, Alan Smith, was telling me a little anecdote about when he went to Boy Scout camp as a tenderfoot, and the older boys made him sit out in the woods at night, keeping an eye open for the red-eyed dingwa. Well, finally, around 4 o'clock in the morning, he understood that there was no such thing as a red-eyed dingwa and wandered back to camp, and he was quite the joke, quite the newbie in the camp. I guess we've all had those little pranks pulled on us. Lee, what are your memories of summer camp?
Well, I started going to Girl Scout camps when I was about 9 and went through camps, went through counselor and training unit, was a counselor of the year I graduated from high school. And then I worked for the Girl Scouts for about 7 years after I graduated from college. So I did a lot of camping.
Worked as in got a paycheck worked?
Well, let's see. The summer that I worked as a counselor, I made I think tuition for a 2-week session was $60. And I think I got paid about $60 for the whole summer. But I had enough to buy a London Fog raincoat with an alpaca zip-out lining to take to college with me, with my initials embroidered on the collar. So I guess it was a profitable summer.
You were the cat's meow.
Boy, I sure was. I wore that coat for years and years and years. But the camp things that I loved the camp and the camp that I went to at home, Camp Gertrude Coleman. There was a portrait of Gertrude in the dining hall, and she was a very stern looking woman in her Girl Scout uniform. I think she had been one of the founders of that council that included Birmingham. But the camps that I'm probably going to talk about today are a little bit more upscale than Camp Coleman was. Now, Camp Coleman is still in operation, and there are no tent units anymore. There are indoor plumbing. There are lodges that you can rent for troop camps or private events that are air conditioned and have complete electric kitchens. We didn't have any of that. We had outhouses. But,
well, Lee, as a gray-haired curmudgeon, you know what I have to say? Oh, boy, the kids nowadays have it so easy.
They just don't know. But the camps that I want to talk about this morning are primarily private, expensive camps up in the mountains of North Georgia and North Carolina, some of which have been in operation for 100 years, or about 100 years, and are still in operation. And so we have some slides. Let's see. Alan, do you have the one for Camp Dixie for girls? Okay. Camp Dixie for girls was started in 1919 by a man named Pop Jameson. He had taken his boys camping. This is in Rabun County, Georgia, which is in the very far northeastern corner of the state. It's near a little town called Wiley, Georgia. And in 1914, he started Camp Dixie for boys. And then in 1919, Camp Dixie for girls. And the booklet for Camp Dixie describes this as a camp for superior girls. They did not want girls with behavior problems. If a girl presented such problems, they would be sent home. It was expensive, even for 1922, $250 for the summer sessions. And they lived in what they called tentelos. If we have a picture of some of the cabins.
Tentelo?
Tentelos. I think there's another. Well, these are just some general pictures. There's a lake, and these are some of the cabins here. And this was one of the main dining hall or something like that. And here they are playing. It looks like they're playing volleyball, but they also had basketball. They had tennis. They had riding. They had canoeing. The tentelos
had everything but boys.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the boys. The tentelos, the upper level was bunk beds. The lower level was the living area, and I think they put together the word tent and bungalow to come up with this thing. And the buildings that are still there, some of them are still the original buildings. Of course, they've been refurbished over the years. The brother camp was known as Camp Dixie for boys, of course, and it was across the lake. And my husband worked at Camp Dixie for boys for 2 summers in 1966 and 67. And another thing on Camp Dixie for girls, you see their outfits. The prescribed camp outfit was bloomers and a midi top. They didn't have to all match. They could buy their own. They didn't have to come from a certain company, but that's what they had to wear. They wore the bloomers, long socks, and the midi blouses. And that was that was what was prescribed in the booklet. Was this is what you bring to camp. The girls were expected to make their beds, but they had servants, and that's what they're referred to in the camp. In the booklet is that they had servants. So I'm sure they didn't have to clean bathrooms or outhouses or anything like that. The booklet came with a little tipped-in letter from a pastor in Atlanta, and on the back was another testimonial from another pastor in Atlanta about how wonderful the camps were. And then there's an application for the following year, and they encouraged people in the booklet, to go ahead and register for the following year. They were limited to 70 girls, and oddly enough, that's still their capacity, or has been their capacity in recent years, is 70. Each cabin had a counselor and 7 children. Camp Dixie for girls was ages 11 through 17. I think Camp Dixie for boys, went a little bit younger than that. So I have some pictures of Camp Dixie from the 60s. This was Bob's cabin, one of the years in 1967. There are only 6 boys there, but maybe one of them went home. I don't know. And I have several of those T-shirts still here at the house. He coached golf, and I think I have, is there a group of 4 pictures? Yeah, here we go. This was some of the counselors on one of their days off somewhere near the camp. This is Sarge, the camp dog. Some golfers. They golfed on the Clayton Country Club golf course, and then that was the inside of the cabin. The cabin changed hands sometime after he was a counselor there, but then it has continued up until the 2019 season. But looking at today's website, the camps, both of the camps, are for sale. They have not been open for 20 or 21, and because of COVID, they have now put the camps on the market. So if you're in the market for a very nice pair of summer camps in a very pretty area, then, you might give that a try. But this is another camp that has been in operation since 1920, Camp Elahi in Brevard, North Carolina. And this was from the 1925 season, or 1927 season. They are still in operation and have managed to do this with very strict guidelines, to deal with COVID. And to send your daughter for 4 weeks to Camp Elahi right now costs you $7,400. So it's these were
3,000% increase since 1927.
But these were camps that generation after generation from one family would go to. The same is true of Camp Arrowhead, which is between Asheville and Hendersonville, North Carolina. This is a 1960 brochure. Well, booklet actually, but their rates for four, this is for boys, for 4 weeks, I think is at about a little over $5,000 now. And these were only a few of the camps in that area. Some that I don't have the brochures from, Camp Carolina. These were all in that same Asheville, Brevard, Hendersonville area. And let's see, there was one, I can't remember what the other one was, but there were several in that area. And of course, if you're going to be in a camp, you got to have camp songs. So we have a picture of the the Yellowstone, of course, after Yellowstone became a national park, the camps and lodges were run by concessionaires. And this booklet is from around 1960, when it was being run by an organization called the Yellowstone Park, Lodge, and Camps Company. And it started in 1928 and then changed hands again in 1936. So this book of camp songs is from probably from the early 30s. It's really kind of fun to read. Some songs and sing. Well, unlike Ed, I'm not going to burst into song.
I'm going
to read.
I remember my camp song.
I'm going to read one, however. Okay. And this is to the tune of Jingle Bells. Dashing through the park in a Ford or motor car, you hurry past the freaks so fast you can't tell what they are. You see a painted gorge, a valleys filled with steam. You can't believe the sights you see, and things can't be what they seem. Honk that horn, a camping life for me. The only way to see the park is with the YPC. So a lot of the songs in here are, takeoffs with a familiar tune. But there also, I noticed, a lot of Stephen Foster type songs, like Old Folks at Home, My Old Kentucky Home. There are, some what would be considered racist today, a lot of references to darkies and the old plantation and Massa, this kind of thing. But this was, a booklet that was, I'm sure, sold at the camps. And an interesting feature on the back of the booklet, which I don't have a picture of, but I can show you here, is a kind of a glossary of what the Yellowstone lingo was. For example, dudes were tourists riding the yellow buses. Sagebrushers were auto camp tourists. Savages were the camp employees. Now, most of the camp employees were actually employees of the concessionaires and not of the Park Service. Pack rats were porters in the lodges. Pillow punchers were the maids in the lodges. Rotten logging was dating. And pearl divers were the dishwashers in the lodges. So it's a nice little historical look at camping. During this period from 28 to 36, the move was away from tent camping into cabin and lodges. And which is certainly what is, of course, now they're back to campgrounds with tents, and if you bring your own tents, but earlier than this, there were camps in the park run by concessionaires that did feature tents. But so this is an interesting little book of songs, and I think that's.
Now, Lee, how is it that you have this material? Have you been collecting this camp material for a while, or it just happens to be in your inventory?
Well, most of it, because of being in Georgia and because we've traveled in northwestern North Carolina and northeast Georgia a lot, particularly in western North Carolina, anytime we would find a camp brochure for sale, we would buy it. And I've probably sold 8 or 10 over the years from different camps. And they're just a fascinating, with the camping background that I have, they're just a fascinating look at what's really kind of a segment of society, particularly a segment of society that sent their kids to camp, that paid a lot to send their kids to camp, that did it for generations, and it was a defining feature. I went to camp, whatever, and you meet somebody. It's like whatever college you went to. You meet somebody who went to camp so and so. The song now I don't think this was the official song, but the song from Camp Dixie back in the 60s was, way up in Wiley, Georgia, where the mountain breezes blow, there are the Dixie camps, and they cost a lot of dough. But the dough doesn't matter if you have a lot of fun swimming in the lake and playing in the sun. So that was the unofficial camp song for Camp Dixie in the 60s. But they're a lot of fun to read, the list of what you should take. Oh, but I do want to, there are comments by campers that I think must have been actually made by the, or dictated by the counselors, because one child supposedly wrote home, "You must not send me cake, as it is not good. It is not considered best for good health nor good discipline. We have dessert every day and dinner and ice cream twice a week. So don't send me cake." And it's hard for me to believe the little girl wrote her mama and said, "Don't send me cake." But
I'll tell you what would be great is collecting some of those from the camp letters.
Oh, yeah. Do
you remember that Alan Sherman song?
Oh, of course. Hello, Mama. Hello, Baba.
Hello, Fada. Here I am at Camp Granada.
I know. I know. So that it's just an interest in that area, and I also went to church camp. Church camp was a whole different thing. We had nice cabins. We had boys. We had this is Methodist. We had square dancing every night. We took a dress with us for the final evening's church service and then social thing. we took an entirely different wardrobe to church camp than we did to Girl Scout camp, I will have to say.
How about fish camp, Lee? Have you been to fish camp? Tell
well,
everybody what fish camp
there
is.
are famous fish camps in the same area as these summer camps.
Tell some of our listeners who may not know what a fish camp is.
Yeah, well, you can tell us all about that.
Basically, it's a big fry, right? Sitting next to the lake and the fish and the hush puppies.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you know, Lee, one other thing that came out of camp, certainly as your quote implied earlier, the friendships, the memories that come out of camp are really, really great. But if there's one thing that's pretty universal about these camps, it's the respect for nature. It's learning how to live in nature and how to live with nature. And I imagine there was some of that in your camps as well.
Of course. The first thing you learned was how to identify poison ivy. That's your first, and you learn
enemy number one.
That was it. And then you learned about snakes, about how to identify poisonous snakes, and I still remember that we had a lot of sassafras, really just little trees, bushes at Camp Coleman, and they had 3 different kinds of leaves. And so I can now, at 76, recognize a sassafras tree out in the wild. But we did, we cleaned up after ourselves, pack it in, pack it out.
Yep.
When we did primitive camping, except for some scattered cold ashes, you could not tell where we had been.
Leave no trace.
And I think that these are things that, children who are now so used to being picked up after and cleaned up after don't necessarily, I think we're trying to instill this in our grandchildren, but it's still something we learned at camp. We learned a respect for nature. We learned a respect for each other. We learned a respect for older people. I mean, even if that older person was a college girl,
Yeah.
And I noticed in looking back on the current Camp Coleman information, one of the women who was active in Girl Scouts in Birmingham when I was a kid's name was Fear Fowler, spelled Fehr. She was a tall, slender lady, very short hair, and she was probably at that time I thought she was old. She's probably in her 40s or 50s. And she came out to camp fairly often. She worked with I think, I'm not sure, she was executive director of the council, but she came out to camp very often and got to know her pretty well, over the years. And I noticed that their service center for the council now, 50, 60 years later, is named for her, which I thought was nice.
Very nice.
I thought that was nice.
Well, Lee, a little segue into a session that we have coming up later in the show from Mary Kay Watson, who's going to be talking about the Civilian Conservation Corps. I happen to have with me this book, We Can Take It, A Short History of the Civilian Conservation Corps. And I want to read a little excerpt here. In recent years, President Roosevelt said in a message to Congress, little groups of earnest men and women have told us of this havoc of the cutting of our last stands of virgin timber, of the increasing floods, of the washing away of millions of acres of our topsoils, of the lowering of our water table, of the dangers of one-crop farming, of the depletion of our minerals. In short, the evils we have brought upon ourselves today, and the even greater evils that will attend our children unless we act. Well, that was written in 1933, and I think it's pretty true today.
It is still true.
We learned a lot about nature in these camps, but I'm not sure we always
pay attention
or put it all into action. It's looking like this time around will be a little bit more serious than the Dust Bowls of 1927, right, unless we can get our hands around this climate control.
Right.
That's another story and another show. Right now on this show, thank you for that presentation, Lee. Very interesting, very nostalgic, and enjoyed it greatly. Speaking of enjoying it greatly, now it's time for one of our favorite segments, everybody's favorite segment, David Hess of the Bookman Bookstore in Orange, California. He's got some intriguing items to share with us today. Take it away, David.
Hello, this is David from the Bookman in Orange, California, welcoming you to the show today, and I want to thank you for stopping by. The title of the show is Things Found in Old Books, and so we will start right away with Things Found in Old Books. So starting off today, we found this Life Notes of C.B. Murray, rather old kind of chewed on book. But inside, what I found interesting about this particular book was that on the front page here, it says privately printed and published by request, it says down here. And so inside was a little note that says, Life Notes of Charles B. Murray. At the time of forwarding this book, there are some copies remaining of the limited edition available for persons who may desire them, $2.50 per copy. And then it gives a street address. And included was a little bookmark. This is the era of 1915, by the way. I didn't mention that. So 1915 bookmark, and it's rather unremarkable. But down here it says C.J. Kriebel and Company in Cincinnati. Now they're the ones who did the publishing and the printing. And so I looked them up on the internet, and actually they're still in business. And what they are is a print on demand kind of thing, where it's before Amazon started printing all your books, people's books that felt that they could write one. So this isn't a regular publisher. It's closest thing I can say is a vanity press, where you would write a book and they would print it for you. And these people here are still doing that to this day. You can look them up on they have their own website, and they're still, it's probably not looking like this anymore, but so you can still get your book printed privately by C.J. Nebel of Cincinnati. And I thought that was pretty interesting in the day of publishing your own stuff. They've been doing it for a long time, folks. In this book, The Story of Philosophy by Will and Ariel Durant, or just Will Durant in this case, I found, now the book is from 1938, and I found this. It's from the Milwaukee Public Library, and it's dated March 10th, 1938. And it's the Town Hall Book List, Blueprint for a Better America. And what it is a list of books that you should check out to learn to make America better. And there's a number of titles, and I honestly, I don't think I've ever heard of them, but people out there might be saying, oh man, you never heard of that one? But Land of the Free by Agar, Capitalism and Its Culture by Davis, Program for America by Durant, well, there you go, Primer for Tomorrow by Goss, and there's more on the back. And what it has also is on the bottom of each book, it has like the Dewey Decimal System note there. So when you go in the library, you could just look it up by the Dewey Decimal System and go get it. And you can read these books for a blueprint for a better America. So read these titles and get started. There's like 6 or 7 of them. In this book, The Fixer by Bernard Malamud, very famous book. And inside, I found this envelope addressed to these people, in this case, Pasadena, California. And what it is, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to the Huntington Beach and Company and Gordon McDonald cordially invite you to the pre-opening ceremonies at the Huntington Center, Ettinger and Beach Boulevard in Huntington Beach, Sunday, November 13th, 1966. Now, the reason that I find this so interesting is the Huntington Beach Mall was actually right down the street from where I live. And I remember when the mall opened in 66, it was a big deal. It was one of the first malls opened in Orange County. And my family was very excited to have it come into town because the whole concept of a mall where you go inside and all these shops was quite unique at the time. Now, actually, Huntington Beach Mall is still there. It's not quite the same proud lion it once was, but no malls are. Malls are kind of slowly disappearing from the landscape. So I found that extremely interesting for me and for the locals here in Orange County. And finally, from the archives, I got this crate label from the Stevens Hotel, the world's greatest hotel in Chicago. And apparently it's a label that you would stick on your suitcase, or that's what I'm guessing. You would stick it on your suitcase or a crate. I don't know. Anyway, so, and I could tell by the little airplane there and the cars down there, it's most likely from the 30s. The mall itself the hotel was open from 1927 to 1945 when it changed ownership and kind of went into disrepair. But at the time when this hotel opened in 27, it was the biggest hotel in the world. It boasted 30,000 rooms and also 3,000 baths. So you wouldn't get a room without a bath because you got it all there. So at the time, it was the largest and probably, from I read, the most expensive. It cost more than Yankee Stadium, which was built just a few years earlier. So it was a big deal back then, back in the day. And I found that in a book, and it's in very good shape. It's been folded, but overall, it's in very nice shape. And that's all I have for today. Now, if you folks find anything in a book that you would like to share, please send a picture and a brief description of what you found, and I would be delighted to share it with the audience on this program. So feel free to send it to oldbook@ebookman.com. That's oldbook, no S, at ebookman.com. And I want to thank you for stopping by today, and we will see you next week. This is David from the Bookman in Orange, California, wishing you a good afternoon, and see you later.
All right. Thank you, David. Always a pleasure and always interesting things. And folks, if you find something interesting in a book, please take a picture of it and send it via email to oldbook@ebookman.com. That's oldbook@ebookman.com. Let David know what you found, and let's see your treasures show up on the show next week or in one of our coming shows. Thanks a lot, David. All right, now it's time for one of our other favorite contributors, Mary Kay Watson from West Virginia. This week, Mary Kay is going to go a little bit deeper into the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and some associated ephemera that she has found to go along with that topic. Mary Kay, hello, welcome on the show.
Good morning, Ed and Lee. How are you today?
A-OK. Welcome back, Mary Kay.
We're glad to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
I say the same thing every morning when I look in the mirror to shave. It's nice to see me. What are you talking to us about today? What's our topic?
Well, I'm talking about the Civilian Conservation Corps and my connection to it, or my family's connection to it.
Very personal.
Yes. I found in an old trunk that my father gave me, I found a sweetheart pillow. So a little bit of ephemera today. The sweetheart pillow is something that's in really bad shape, but it's got a poem on it. And if you look on eBay, you'll find so many sweetheart pillows from so many different places. In the military, they came about, I think, probably sometime in the 30s, sometime around World War II. There was a lot of them. There's so many for different, like Fort Dix, all the different military forts, different wars. I'm going to read the poem that's on there. It's really hard to see, but all the sweetheart pillows have this in common. They have this poem, and the poem goes like this. I thought that you would like to know that someone's thoughts go where you go, that someone never can forget the hours we spent since we met, that life is richer, sweeter far for such a sweetheart as you are. And now my constant prayer will be that God may keep you safe for me. This particular sweetheart pillow is from the Civilian Conservation Roosevelt's New Deal. It was 1933 to 1942. It was set up so that poor men, young men, could join the Corps, do some work, get paid. They were given clothing, room, and board, and they were only paid $30 a month, but the catch was they had to send $25 home to their family every month to save. And my grandfather, my father's father, Camden Brown, was one of the boys of volunteer. It was a kind of a civilian army, and my grandmother, she needle pointed her name, Catherine, and his name, Camden Brown, on the corners of the pillow. There's a picture of that too. And my grandfather entered the civilian, and they built different things around West Virginia. There's my grandmother's name, Catherine Catterman. And on this particular pillow, there's 3 young men. One looks like he's reading a letter from home. One's the other 2 are listening. The one is smoking a pipe. It's just a pretty pillow and a thoughtful gift to give to your loved one when they go off to, in this particular, in West Virginia. And that's his name, Camden Brown. Pillow's in really bad shape. It was in the bottom of that trunk that my dad gave me all these years. Now, one thing about the Civilian Conservation Corps, yes.
Hey, a quick question. Do you happen to know the value of these sweetheart pillows? I recently looked at a home, did a home visit, and had lots of items from World War II, and there were about 17 sweetheart pillows that he had collected, and I didn't pick them up because they weren't books, and I didn't think they had much value. I wasn't aware of them before. Do you have any idea what these might be worth?
I don't. I think that the value is probably pretty low on them. Actually, when I looked on eBay, to be honest with you, I didn't even look at the dollar amounts. I was trying to find a good print of the poem so that I could read the poem because it was really hard to read.
But now I guess I know now that it started before World War II. That the custom of sweetheart pillows was pre-World War II.
Yes. One interesting thing that I want to add about this particular pillow and the Civilian Conservation Corps is that the CCC, as it was called, was integrated. For the first 2 years, blacks and whites worked together, but in the South, it was segregated from the very beginning. So people of color were not working with white people in the South. They had separate camps for the blacks and the whites in the South. And after the first 2 years in the North, it was segregated in the North also. But it started out integrated in the North, which I thought was interesting. And Alan actually has a picture of my grandfather. One of the things that I found interesting about that, first of all, it tells what his age was when he entered, what year it was, and all of that information. And it tells where his camp was. But it also, instead of saying race, like a lot of forms have said in the past, it says color. So you were to write in if you were white or black.
Do you happen to know what project your grandfather worked on?
I don't. My
Up here in the Northwest,
grandfather passed away years ago.
We have a tremendous number of projects here in the Northwest that were done either by the Civilian Conservation Corps or the WPA, and there's still many lodges and trails and edifices and erosion control, switchbacks. It's just, I mean, the trail system we have out here in the Northwest is beholden to those men who cut those trails many years ago.
Our state park system here in Georgia, just so many of the buildings that still stand were done by the Corps. And some of the parks, like Vogel State Park, which is up in Northeast Georgia, has a small museum about the CCC. And I know that Florida is just covered with projects. A lot of the state parks down there, there's a state park called Olino State Park that has this fantastic swinging bridge that was done by the CCC that's still in use, today. And most of those parks have little museums, with artifacts and pictures and things like that.
I particularly love the stone buildings. Some of those stone buildings are just beautiful architecture and just gorgeously made. They were
fireplaces inside are just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. You have to wonder what these young men did as a result of this training.
And it's the same thing here in West Virginia, too. Our state parks, most of them were carved out and built by the Corps.
Now, Mary Kay, I imagine these were just for pretty pillows. They would have been stuffed and placed on the bed or a couch just for looks.
I remember my grandmother from the other side of my family. She had one that my uncle, her son, had sent her from when he was overseas somewhere, and it was on her couch in her parlor. They used to call the rec room the parlor.
Did they have to buy these with their $5 a month that they were allowed to keep?
I have no idea. That's a good question. And I wonder, too, if perhaps they were given these.
Maybe so.
And to give to their sweetheart or their mother. And so that's quite possible, too.
Yeah.
But it was to help people that were really, it was part of the New Deal to help people to get out of their money woes. It was during the Great Depression, so this served a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a couple of pillows from the World War II era that don't have the sweetheart poem, but are pillow covers that my uncle brought back. One from India, and I can't remember where the other one's from, but one was from India. But they have elaborate beading and embroidery on them. But it's the same kind of idea.
I think this is a good case for Barbara Lowe. I think we need to put her on this one.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. What I wish I could go back and ask my grandparents is, I'd like to ask my grandfather, now, since Grandma went ahead and needle-pointed your names on this pillow, did you have to marry her after that? Because that looks like a lot of work.
One thing that hasn't changed in 100 years is relationships.
Yes. Well, it seems
all right, Mary
like
Kay,
after
when are you
all
coming back?
that work, he would be obligated.
Yes.
It sounds like a quasi proposal. Mary Kay, when are you coming back with some of your own stuff? We haven't seen your work in a couple of months.
I'll be back in a couple weeks, and I'll show you a couple things that I've been working on.
All right, give us a hint. Which Shakespeare play are you working on?
I'm working on Hamlet right now. I'll bring a page that I've worked on for that. Good. But, baseball season is kind of winding down, and I'm a baseball enthusiast and an artist. So I'll bring one of the baseballs that I have done some work on.
Ooh, interesting. That will be fun, just in time for the Atlanta Braves to show up in the World Series.
That's right. We hope. It's been a long time.
Have you and Alan made a bet yet on the Atlanta Braves versus the
No, we
Tampa
haven't.
Bay?
No, we haven't, but maybe we should.
Take some money out of his pocket.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah.
After all, I mean, he's not paying you very well for this.
He's not paying any of us very well, except Richard. Richard said yesterday he was being paid very well. So, other than Richard.
All right, Mary Kay, thank you for sharing your family history with us. We enjoyed it.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. All right, Lee, welcome back for your next segment. Boy, you're carrying the show this week. Thanks a lot. Broad shoulders. Is the book club back in business, Lee?
Book club, we meet once a month, and so we had the Pride and Prejudice
Thursday
meeting.
Nights, right?
What?
Thursday nights?
No, Sunday nights. Fourth Sunday. And so I had asked at that last meeting that I would like a list from people of their favorite books of the close to 140 that we've read over. We finally determined that the book club started in August of 2003. So we're coming up. We've completed 18 years, and we've decided we may start celebrating our 20th anniversary soon. So we think that might be a good idea. So we're going to do that.
Never too early to celebrate.
No, never too early to celebrate. So they've been slow coming in, and I still have more to come in, but I picked out another 8 today that have been favorites, some of which were multiple people, and can kind of give you an idea of where it's trending with the book club. So Huck Finn appeared twice, and I think everybody enjoyed it. It's a lot to read, and many people had already read it, when they were younger, but we're rereading it, and we always have a few people who say, "Well, I read it years ago. I'm not going to reread it." But I think most everybody did reread it, and we enjoyed it very much. We enjoy most of Mark Twain. One of our book club members at the moment just finished reading The Prince and the Pauper, which he had never read, and then asked me to order a copy of the Recollections of Joan of Arc by Twain that was published in a really pretty Library of America edition, along with The Prince and the Pauper and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. And so he got it this week, and he can let the book club know how he enjoyed that. Another choice, okay, we can go to the next one. We'll do East of Eden. That's fine. East of Eden has actually appeared on 2 lists. We really liked it. I think everybody enjoyed it a lot. Most everybody had read a fair amount of Steinbeck already, and some people had seen the movie but had never read the book. And when you do that, there are always quibbles about, well, it wasn't like the movie or it wasn't like the book, this kind of thing. But was dealt with a part of the country that we were not so familiar with, and with a period of time that we were not so familiar with, and it was a good selection for us, and one that I think we all recommended that people should read. particularly if all you had read was, say, Grapes of Wrath, that this was a good selection with interesting characters. Let's see, what do we have next?
Well, I'm going on vacation soon, Lee, and you're going to be in charge of the show while I'm gone, and I'm definitely going to be packing a couple of these books with me.
Okay, good. What do we? Okay, all right. This is interesting. We had 3 people out of the 6 who've responded put this on their favorite list. And when the book came out, there was a lot of publicity about the book and about what was going on in Afghanistan and what she did and this kind of thing. And it's easy to be drawn into this, it's an emotional book. It's easy to be drawn into the plight of the people and this kind of thing. And we were all very impressed. We went on to read soon after that 1,000 Splendid Suns when it came out. And we were somewhat less than impressed with it, partly because it seemed kind of anticlimactic. If you've read the book, at the end, they're able to get on a bus and leave. And, the question is, well, why weren't they able to get on the bus and leave earlier? And so that was kind of a little bit of a question. But, there's so much we don't know about what went on and what has gone on in that part of the world. And
certainly with everything that's going on there
and going on right now,
and
what folks went through, that kind of thing, that the glimpse that we get through like those 2 books is just astounding, and really I think foreign to the way that we live and to the freedoms that we enjoy. But the Kite Runner was a very popular selection for the book club. What do we have next, Alan? Okay. One person listed The Book Thief, which is set in World War II. A girl who starts stealing books, and I enjoyed the book. We kind of got, I won't say it's in a rut. We've read a lot of books about strong women, this being one of them, and what they did to survive or how they coped with adversity. Some, international stories, some in the United States, and some of those that we will get to in a further list. We also kind of got into a World War II segment with The Book Thief, with All the Light We Cannot See, and what was can't remember the name of the other one, but several that had to do with primarily with women during World War II, and things that they faced and how they dealt with them. Of course, some were novels, but that got to be a little theme there for a while.
Well, whether it's the main character or a backup character, books about books are always a fun read. Yes,
they are, and this was based on a true story of a girl who did not know how to read until she started stealing books, and of course it was set in Nazi Germany, but it's an interesting look at at that time and period. We have another strong women book here, The Moonflower Vine. It's about a family who had 4 daughters, and in each of them very different, and what happened to them very different. And the Moonflower Vine, what was blooming when the girls would come home. That was kind of the touchstone, for the home place was the Moonflower Vine. But it was another one about women and how they handled difficult situations. It's a family saga sort of, but a couple of people liked that really well. Wasn't one of my favorites, though it was an easy, pleasant read. But it was another favorite. Let's see, what do we have next? This was one of my favorites, and I was the only one that put it on there. I love this book. I'm not a big Cormac McCarthy fan. I found, for example, The Road almost impossible to read.
Very dark.
Just almost impossible. But No Country for Old Men, I really do like. And I really do like the movie. Though Bob and I went to the movie with another couple who are also in the book club, and the wife in that couple, was hiding her eyes at points during the movie, and did not want to read the book. She did not want to, and I'm not at all sure that she did, but this was not one of her favorites, but it is one of my favorites, and we could have kind of listed this, as a Southern, since he was from Tennessee, but it would have been on Bob's favorite list as well. That this would have been. So what do we have next? We have a couple more. The Natural.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Another
Here
good
we
baseball
go.
book.
Baseball book.
I'm sure it's on Rick Wilbur's list.
That's right. That's right. And it's a fine story. It really is. And one of the things that we talked about in book club was the references to the Fisher King as represented by Pop Fisher in the book, and the knights, the legend, the Grail legend with Parsifal and Galahad, and the tie-ins to that legend, to the legend of the Holy Grail, that are brought up by references in the novel. Of course, there's a long list of novels that have those references. Mm-hmm. But however you read it, as a baseball book, as anything else, it's a fine story, and I think a perennial favorite of baseball fans. Most people know what Wonder Boy was, and so it's a. And I'm sure you've read it, so it may not be one to take on your vacation, but is a fine choice. Okay, the last book we have for today is really a regional writer. Farrell Sams was a physician down in south of Atlanta, in Fayetteville, Georgia, and a writer. And Run with the Horseman was his first book, and it was not published until he was, I think, 61. And there's
still hope for me.
There's still hope. It's a coming of age novel. The boy, it takes place mostly between World War I and World War II. It's part of a trilogy. Porter Osborne Jr. Is the young boy in it. There are parts of it that are laugh out loud funny. I can remember sitting by the window in the den almost in hysterics over some of the book. And it was followed by The Whisper of the River, and then by When All the World Was Young. And by When All the World Was Young, Osborne was a medical student in Emory, and we were coming up on World War II. He is a delightful person. He's funny. This is rural Georgia. This is it is a time when there were servants in the home, and some of you may be familiar with the custom of that goes back to plantation times, of one of the slaves being the first to say Christmas gift to the master, and getting a special gift because they were the first to say it. And Sams wrote a book called Christmas Gift that is partly about that. But it's a lot of fun to read. All three of the books are, and I remember we liked it so well. It was books that we gave my father-in-law for Christmas one year because we just thought he would love them, and he did. And he also wrote books of short stories. One book called The Widow's Mite, and these are probably not as popular today as they were when they came out. But Sam's lived to be 90. His children, 2 of them are now doctors, and 1 I think is a judge. But it was he belonged to a prominent family in Georgia. Writing was he started by keeping a journal, sort of, and telling the story of his own childhood. And of course, Porter Osborne is based on his childhood and his own experiences. And so he started by doing that to give to his children, and then it developed into published books. But this appeared on 3 lists. Now, if it sounds like we've got more favorites than we got people, that's because people couldn't decide. And I have everything from 1 selection to 1 author, multiple books, to 6 and 10 selections. The one who sent me 10 started with 3, and then she added 3 more, and it was kind of, so what? I'll just give you all of them. And so I promised the book club a master list after everyone sends them in, and I suspect that it will probably run 50 books out of the 100 and something we've read. Which only goes to show that we have a wide range of interests in the book club, and very diverse interests in it.
And I'd like to invite our guests out there to send in their favorite book. Maybe it'll show up on Lee Lynn's book club reading list, or share with us what you're reading today and why you're enjoying it. We'll talk about it on the show next week. You can send us an email at rarebookcafe@gmail.com with or without a picture. What's your favorite book and author? All right, Lee, thanks for sharing that with us. We're coming up on the end of the show here. Next week, we've got a really special guest, Chris Saunders, the managing director of Henry Southerns Ltd. Henry Southerns is one of the oldest used bookstores in London. And by the way, they've got an absolutely fabulous Twitter page, Twitter account. He's always got something fun and funny to share on there. Also next week, our favorite genealogist and museum owner, Gigi Best, is going to hopefully be returning now that she's moved from Tampa, Florida to the nation's oldest city in St. Augustine. So we've got another show already planned for you folks next week. But today, Lee, today is a bit of a somber day. As in America, we have many remembrances. And of course, today is a tribute, a memory of 20 years ago today, the attack on the United States and especially the World Trade Center. What are your memories of that day, Lee?
Well, I was directing a preschool. I was in my office when a mother called on the phone and said that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, and that she thought at that point, as I think many of us did, that it was an aviation accident, that a plane had gone off course. But she was coming to get her child. She was going to come. And I said, well, sure, that's fine, and we'll see what we can find out. And within minutes, someone from the church office, where they had a radio on and then turned the TV on, came to my office to say what had happened. Mm-hmm. So I quietly went upstairs and told the teachers what was going on, and we took the children down into the gym. I'm not sure why the gym was our tornado shelter and, hurricane shelter. But we just thought maybe we should stay together. And, within minutes, parents were lining up at the door coming to pick up kids. And while some, stayed throughout the rest of the morning, most of the children were picked up rather quickly. My boys were both at home. Gardner had just graduated from Georgia, was headed to Los Angeles the next week, job hunting in TV, and went, though we tried to talk him out of it, but he went anyway. And yet Will, the younger one, was home from his first year at Georgia, wasn't planning to go back didn't know what he wanted to do, had talked about joining the National Guard, didn't know what he wanted to do at that point, but they were both home. And so, of course, we spent the next days, what everybody else did, glued to the TV, just absolutely glued to the TV. And there was this feeling of coming together as a nation that I don't think, except for maybe in the wake of Kennedy's assassination, that I had ever felt. You know, people were putting out flags. As collectors of folk art, we had a huge wooden painted flag that went on the porch. Mm-hmm. A very different feeling than, say, reaction to coronavirus and all of that has been, you know, as a nation.
Well, you know, that's what we are as Americans in time of need and times of desperation. We all come together, and shortly thereafter, we all end up going back in different directions again. But if there's anything that can pull Americans together, it's a tragedy.
It is. It was you know, for my generation, the Kennedy assassination had been the defining moment.
Sure.
And for my children's generation, 9/11, you know, has become that point that everyone, you know, remembers. So, unfortunately, we now have two.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that for my generation, which was the Kennedys for me as well. But it's funny how on these national tragedies somehow affect the book world and make things curiously collectible. And I even happen to have a few of my own I just wanted to pull out here. Here is a brochure of material on Kennedy for president, and that was Robert F. Kennedy. And this material comes, here's a hand-drawn picture of Robert Kennedy. This material comes from the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, where, of course, Kennedy was shot and killed after having won the California primary that day and was on his way to probably becoming elected as president. I was also digging through my collection to see what else I found here. I've got this photograph that's autographed by Paul Tibbets. Paul Tibbets was, of course, the pilot commander of the Enola Gay that dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Here's another item that I pulled out of my archives. This is, and let me read this to you, this is Handgun Control Multiple Firearm Purchases and Federal Firearms License Reform, otherwise better known as the Brady Bill. This happens to be signed by Jim Brady, and Jim Brady was the press secretary for Ronald Reagan, who was shot and seriously wounded for life when the attempted assassination of Reagan happened. So somehow or other, these things become a part of our culture, how these national tragedies that are imprinted on our memory also become a bit attached to ephemera built around them. So we were wondering here on the show, what does that have to do with 9/11? Well, of course, there are many coins and commemorative pins and publications of all sorts, books and magazines and contemporary newspapers the day of or the day after the event that memorialize it. But if you go online right now, a cursory glance shows us that you can find a property deed for where the World Trade Center is now located, dated 1813, for that exact plot of land. Today, the deed alone is selling for $26,000. Yeah. We also found the floor plan for the World Trade Center New York Board of Trade trading floor being offered for $49,000. And there was this, a 3-hole punched sheet, probably from a procedure manual, stating who was authorized to declare a disaster at the World Trade Center, asking price $100,000. Now, none of us intend to profit off of disasters, We're merely record keepers of history and the documents that are associated with it. So those are some of these things that we found online, or that just somehow trickles into our shops these days, commemorating the histories and commemorating the tragedies of our country. Lee?
Well, the have always had books about the Kennedy assassination, either historical ones or conspiracy theory or whatever, and they sell regularly.
Yep.
60 years later, nearly. And I haven't had as much about 9/11, but Kennedy material has just sold steadily.
Always.
Always. Whatever you think about the assassination, you can find a book to confirm it.
Kind of like UFOs.
That's right. And like 9/11 too.
Exactly. Well, I think we'll be seeing more of it. I mean, it takes a generation sometimes to understand its role in history, and to get all the facts collected as well. So, Lee, before we head out of the show, I want to say goodbye, because we've got a special poem at the end of the show. On the 10th anniversary of 9/11, America's poet laureate, Billy Collins, read his poem, Names, for the PBS News Hour. Today, we're very pleased to have a recording of Billy Collins' poem, no less poignant on today, the 20th anniversary. And then we're going to follow it by a recording of Taps, also from the PBS News Hour. Lee, I want to wish you a great weekend and some better memories.
Thank you.
The names for the victims of September 11th and their survivors. Yesterday, I lay awake in the palm of the night. A fine rain stole in, unhelped by any breeze, and when I saw the silver glaze on the windows, I started with A, with Ackerman as it happened, then Baxter and Calabro, Davis and Eberling, names falling into place as droplets fell through the dark. Names printed on the ceiling of the night, names slipping around a watery bend, 26 willows on the banks of a stream. In the morning I walked out barefoot among thousands of flowers, heavy with dew like the eyes of tears, and each had a name, Fiore, inscribed on a yellow petal, then Gonzalez and Hahn, Ishikawa and Jenkins. Names written in the air and stitched into the cloth of the day, a name under a photograph taped to a mailbox, monogram on a torn shirt. I see you spelled out on storefront windows and on the bright unfurled awnings of this city. I say the syllables as I turn a corner, Kelly and Lee, Medina, Nardella, and O'Connor. When I peer into the woods, I see a thick tangle where letters are hidden, as in a puzzle concocted for children. Parker and Quigley in the twigs of an ash, Rizzo, Schubert, Torres, and Upton, secrets in the boughs of an ancient maple. Names written in the pale sky, names rising in the updraft amid buildings, names silent in stone or cried out behind a door, names blown over the earth and out to sea. In the evening, weakening light, the last swallows, a boy on a lake lifts his oars, a woman by a window puts a match to a candle, and the names are outlined on the rose clouds, Vanacore and Wallace. Let X stand, if it can, for those unfound. Then Young and Zeminski, the final jolt of Z. Names etched on the head of a pin, one name spanning a bridge, another undergoing a tunnel, a blue name needled into the skin, names of citizens, workers, mothers and fathers, the bright-eyed daughter, the quick son. Alphabet of names in green rows in a field, names in the small tracks of birds, names lifted from a hat or balanced on the tip of the tongue, names wheeled into the dim warehouse of memory, so many names, there is barely room on the walls of the heart.